So now we're looking at, what are we looking at? So what do I need? I need loss of the creature. So I need to go back to, I think it was our last agenda that I last linked it to. And now I'm asking my computer to do too many things. And I have the Wheel of Death. Here it comes. So slow. Come on. I am happy to have sound, though, that I can hear you. That's always really good. Is this it? No. There it is. So if you've got questions and your audio works effectively, go ahead and ask your question aloud. Alternatively, you may ask your question in the chat. So questions, what do you need to have answered? What do you need to know? What are you struggling with? What are you wondering about this essay? Remember, your curiosity is key.
So I was looking at the bottom where it says questions for a second reading.
Uh-huh.
And the third question is, basically, to summarize, it's asking like why he doesn't use first person accounts. And I was wondering the same thing when I was reading it, why do you think he did it? Why were all of his stories like just made up anecdotes?
Which one? Number two, questions for a second reading, or the first one?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was unmuted. The third question?
Oh, the third one. Okay.
Yeah. I was wondering the same thing, like why he didn't use first person accounts.
So what does everybody say? What do we say? How do we respond to that? Why does he not use first person accounts? The last word in the first sentence for number 3, I think, is important.
I think he used anecdotes that he made up because he mentioned in the reading that they couldn't, like, he would have trouble getting someone to not deny the fact that they could see. So he was like going to go to the Grand, if he was going to go to the Grand Canyon and try to tell someone that they're actually not seeing what they're seeing, it wouldn't work very well. So in order to point to his thesis per se, he has to make up his own stories and then have people like understand them and then see themselves in the story. I don't know. That's what I thought.
So the hypotheticals make it easier for an individual to be able to imagine for themselves such an encounter. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Okay. Grace, does that answer your question? What else? Think, or alternatively, think of what the impact of the first person account would have. If it's all his experience, then under those circumstances, then it's all his experience. Many of the examples are, let's see here. If we go back up to so, like this, the second word of the third paragraph and the second word of the third paragraph, the third word of the fourth paragraph, these ideas of assuming things. That allows for an easier ability for us to be able to go along with some of the things that he has to say. So I think that's part of our purpose. What else? Other questions?
So I was a little stuck on the title, and this might have already been answered throughout the whole article, but what is the creature that he's talking about? Is he talking about the wonder of the place? I know he starts out talking about the Grand Canyon and how amazing it is, and how when people want it to be so amazing, it ends up not being amazing because they put it up to this high standard. So is the creature their ideals, or I was just confused on that.
I don't know. What do we think? What is the creature? How would it be that our ideals would be a creature? What does he mean by the loss of the creature?
I think when he says creature, it kind of gives us an idea of just pure what you are as a whole, what you originally are. And so taking for example other people's ideas, or trying to compare to what society thinks based on yourself, kind of takes away from yourself as a creature. I don't know.
So it's more about us rather than things that we're thinking and or feeling.
That's how I interpreted it.
Okay.
Could it be the innocence, loss of, not innocent, not in the past when we were reading about innocence, and it's this childhood thing, but could it be loss of initial discoveries? Because I feel that was a big thing with the first section of the Grand Canyon. It's that loss, not having that expectation for something to be great, and then without expectations,
Well, and so why might it not be the innocence of our childlike qualities? I mean, can we be an adult and still have a certain innocence about ourselves that is childlike until we're confronted with something that is disruptive? I think I think that may be something. It's fascinating that he calls it a creature. It's not the loss of innocence.
Yeah, I think he that childlike stuff you mentioned before, he kind of symbolizes that or kind of sums it up by saying losing sovereignty. He's saying in the examples he was using about the dogfish, the science student has a whole package. As they're a student, they're a consumer and they have expectations, and they lost the sovereignty of, or the childlikeness of, like, not knowing, of just having this entity in front of them instead of a specimen. And they're talking about how a specimen is already, just from that word, it's kind of taking some of the experience away.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I saw the creature as like different. I saw it as like the thing in question that they were looking at, like the Grand Canyon or the dogfish or whatever that was in question that they were talking about. I felt like that was the creature, and the loss of that was like the loss of seeing it as a creature and seeing it just as a dogfish. Because you give it a title, you give it a theory, you give it a name, you just like box it in, and then it's not like this thing to be explored and to be discovered. It's just like you lose the creature part of it, so it's just not as special, and it's just a thing now.
Okay.
That's what I kind of was trying to get with the innocence thing, because I completely agree with Evelyn. It's like the innocence of, what she said, like a thing. Like after you like learn about the Grand Canyon, after you have these expectations, you lose that that discovery element, that loss of knowledge, which I don't know if that like goes along with innocence, but it's kind of that thing.
I think it kind of does. So not that I want anybody to go looking ahead right now, but I do speculate a little bit on it. But in the homework that I give you for today, but there's I think that it's good that we don't have a set answer in terms of what it is. I think it's deliberate on the part of the author to not tell us what it is, and there's likely a good reason behind that, and I think struggling with it is important for us. But you're either able to speak to it and what your understanding of it is, or you are not. And I think either one of those is okay. Either one of those scenarios is okay. Other thoughts, questions?
I guess my idea of it is it's kind of everyone's put together in kind of a general way. I think that the depicting of the loss is basically important development for human beings. Maybe that development is a sense of wonder, kind of what other people said. And I just said this development is kind of being thrown away through societal expectations and these standardized preconceptions for the character of human beings, basically.
What else?
I kind of said that the loss was more of like the loss of your unobscured view of the world. So basically, because when you're a kid, it kind of, with the back of the innocence thing, if you're a kid, you don't know anything, you discover new things all the time, everything is brand new. When you're an adult, you've learned more, you don't discover as much. And so I said you lose your unobscured view because your view as a child is just the same as you're playing like straight up, whatever you see is what you see. When you're an adult, everything has something behind it, or you already know about it, or you already have all preconceptions about a certain thing that makes it different from what it truly is, or what you think it is. And so I said it's your unobscured view is what you're losing through those.
All right. Yeah, I think what the loss is pretty clear. Something else to maybe think about a little bit in terms of the creature might be its root, and the idea of the thing that does not yet have a name that is newly created, or the original construct of the creation. It might have something to do with that as well. So the title is, as I said, I think deliberately unclear. Does the word creature appear anywhere in the essay? I don't know why I can't remember that. I've read this so many times, and I don't know that a control F is going to work here. I doubt it. Does anybody recall seeing creature anywhere in there?
I don't remember seeing it once.
So that may be something worth noting as well. But before determining that, you might want to give it another skim. What other questions do you need to have answered about this essay, about Walker Percy's The Loss of the Creature? What are you wondering? What do you need to know?
On page 465, near the top of the page, Percy talks about a person who's brought into the Bright Angel Lodge as like a recovery place. And when he regains his consciousness, he sees the canyon outside of the window. And I was wondering if this disorientation or a lack of intent to see the Grand Canyon can recover the original experience of the Grand Canyon, like the original discoverer, or if it's just enriching the experience a little bit. I'm wondering if there's any way that we can get back to that original experience.
So what do we say? Can we?
I think that might be what the whole point of like that loss. It's because once you already have an idea of something, there's not really any way, unless you're like your memory is completely erased, to have that same like first experience. That makes sense. Like I think this whole thing is kind of I thought it was really repetitive, and it was just like kind of replaying the same ideas, but it kind of all seemed like it had that same idea of living blindly, if that makes sense. Like living without expectations leads for not like a happier life, but like a more exciting, maybe even more fulfilling thing.
Okay. Yeah, imagine an individual with coronavirus having to recuperate at the Bright Angel Lodge. Not expecting to wake up there. It is repetitive. What do we make of the repetition? Is it bothersome? Is it necessary?
I feel like the reason that he like repeated the idea so many times is because he wanted to show like all the different ways that it could happen and like a bunch of different people. Because like every situation was different and had like the same idea and like the same outcome, or maybe like the opposite outcome if he was trying to like juxtapose them. But he wanted to get across that this could happen in so many different ways, and he wanted to show like everyone was a different person. Like there was a guy who was recovering, there was like a couple on vacation, there was someone who accidentally found the Grand Canyon or something, like all that stuff, and they were showing how all these different people with like the different experiences all played into how they saw the Grand Canyon differently.
So Isabella, do you think that might be one of the reasons why we don't have first-person accounts?
Yeah, I think that if they made a first-person account, it would kind of like I don't know, I think it would almost make it less relatable because when I was reading it, at least I was like, oh yeah, that's totally me. Like I understand like what he's saying, you know. But if they had like someone coming in and were like, I think this and I think that, I'd be like, okay, cool, that's your opinion. But I feel like the way that he made it like kind of less direct with all the different stories, he also kind of ended up making it more direct in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's a greater universality that exists from, kind of the way that he's telling the story, from all the different angles and the different anecdotes. All right, good. What else?
I think in a way he's kind of like supporting his whole like thesis by making it so that you're discovering yourself like what exactly he's trying to get at throughout like the entire paper until the very end. So you're like basically like you have that innocence or whatever where like it's just your pure like idea of like what exactly he's trying to get at.
Okay. Anything else?
One of my questions was like why he didn't like directly come out and say his thesis. Like he definitely hinted at it and we can all like pretty much figure out like what he was getting at throughout like the whole thing, but like did he actually like in one specific place like state this is like what my whole essay is about?
So what do we say? Does he do that?
I think that he didn't come out and like state it directly. Like he didn't say like it was a 3-pronged thesis with he had like all his parts and everything, and then he followed like the structure. I think what he did was he had this like idea about again like the loss of the creature, whatever the creature is, and then like how and all of your expectations and how that plays in with everything. I think he just takes an idea and he like talks about it in a bunch of different examples in different ways. And I think like that's his thesis. He doesn't have like a direct like thesis statement. Like if you were to make one up based on like the essay you read, it probably wouldn't be in there word for word somewhere. But it's just the whole idea. Just his thesis.
Right. That is ultimately your assignment. Other thoughts, other questions?
I had a question on a couple of terms, just things that I didn't understand. So the first one was this idea of the layman. He brings him up, I think it's like halfway or 3/4 through, and I was just confused on whether he was, or this layman was like supposed to be the common man, or if he had like a different look on like that we've been talking about. And then the other one was just this sort of like dialectic.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up the definition, but trying to like input that definition into his sentences still didn't really give me a sense of what it meant.
So let's start with the first, with the layman. Well, first of all, somebody look for some examples of where the layman appears. And if you could direct us to page numbers, that would be useful.
The last line of page 468.
Okay.
Or the last sentence, I guess.
So let's go with if we start with the third sentence of that paragraph, the highest satisfaction of the sightseer, not merely the tourist, but any layman seer of sights, is that his sight should be certified as genuine. The worst of this impoverishment is that there is no sense of impoverishment. The surrender of title is so complete that it never even occurs to one to reassert title. A poor man may envy the rich man, but the sightseer does not envy the expert. When a caste system becomes absolute, envy disappears. Yet the caste of layman expert is not the fault of the expert. It is due altogether to the eager surrender of sovereignty by the layman, so that he may take up the role not of the person, but of the consumer. So given the content of the paragraph and the content of the last sentence, how do we begin to get at what this layman is? Is it just, the everyday man, the everyman, the regular Joe? Is it something else?
I think that the layman is anybody who's not an expert in that field. And I think it's important to ask, well, what defines an expert? Whether the expert is defined by previous experience at that site, or whether it's defined by their standing in academia or some sort of degree. But I think that the layman is anybody who seeks validation of their experience because they don't believe they're qualified to evaluate the experience.
Okay, I like that. And most of the time, I think that's going to be the average person. So most of us have this tendency. Does that work? And what was the other? Dialectic, right? And it was, I just left it behind on 465. It's underlined there, highlighted. This dialectic of sightseeing cannot be taken into account by planners, for the object of the dialectic is nothing other than the subversion of the efforts of the planners. And so here under these, and what is our definition of dialectic? So our Wikipedia, dialectic or dialectics, also known as the dialectical method, is at base a discourse between two or more people holding different points of view about a subject but wishing to establish the truth through reasoned methods of argumentation. And our Google definitions, now as a noun, the art of investigating or discussing the truth of opinions. 2, inquiry into metaphysical contradictions and their solutions, which we may be struggling a little bit with as well. And then adjective as an adjective relating to dialectic or dialectics, dialectical, comes from Hegel. Merriam-Webster, I like them. A friend of mine actually works for Merriam-Webster. I don't know if she's in charge of their socials, though. Logic, discussion and reasoning by dialogue, logic of appearances and of illusions. logic of fallacy, Marxist, development through the stages of thesis and synthesis, investigation of this process, the theoretical application of the process, especially in the social sciences, intellectual exchange of ideas. And so going back here, the dialectic of sightseeing. So under this circumstance, what is the dialectic then of sightseeing? And everything may be ruined for you now. It's all destroyed. It's all upended. What is the dialectic of sightseeing? What is the dialectic of any seeing of sights? Who's participating in that dialogue? If the dialectic is a dialogue, who's engaging in that dialogue? Who's conversing? Evelyn, it looks like you've got a possible response.
Well, the thing is, it's all just Percy Walker's point of view, so maybe he's like discussing it and kind of arguing it with himself throughout the whole thing.
Well, it wouldn't be him, but I think you're on the right track. Dylan, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that maybe the dialectic is the sightseers, or this is kind of, this doesn't mean it's you want it to be, but maybe the dialectic, like maybe for the Grand Canyon, that could be sightseers and the expert, and maybe that dialogue is happening between them. So, I don't know. I mean, that's an idea.
Okay.
Not really.
Do you have any other possibilities?
Okay, so I don't know if it like completely makes sense, but if we're talking about like sightseeing and like the conversation that's going on, so the conversation between the like sightseer and then the actual place, it's like the thing that they're seeing. So I guess it's not an actual like physical like conversation, but it's the conversation that's going on between like the sightseer, like it's all of their like expectations, like everything that they're expecting to happen, and then it's like what this like the site, so like say the Grand Canyon is like offering and like trying to show them, and it's like the conversation between those two like things.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Other possibilities. How many of you talk to yourself? Is it between the speaker and self? Or the sightseer and self? That, I'm looking at this thing and I'm not feeling what I feel like maybe I'm supposed to be feeling. And I don't know how many of you have been to the Grand Canyon. I have not. But I do have other experiences where maybe because I've done them more than once, that they aren't the same. They certainly aren't the same the second time around. The best experience that I've ever had at an amusement park was at Holiday World, and it was just an overall incredible, indescribable experience. It was perfect timing. It was a perfect scenario, and not only was it a new experience for me, and I had absolutely no expectations at all. On top of that, I got to enjoy it through the lens of my children, and their experiences and how they were enjoying certain things. But if I were to go there again, or somebody were to go there based on my experiences and not have the same kind of great time, there's a loss that happens there under those circumstances. And so an individual might go there and wonder, okay, so why is it that I'm not starts to have that kind of conversation with themselves? Why is it that I'm not enjoying myself as much as Mr. Coffee did, or as much as his kids did? And maybe it's the weather, or maybe it's, I came into it with too many expectations. Think about some of the slides, perhaps, from the gallery walk that I presented to you. How do we avoid throwing away our right of seeing and knowing? And I can't remember if this is part of my homework to you. Let's see here. Do I mention that? Here it is. So a student asked in their first week, and I can't remember who it was, why would I caution my students about reputation, and specifically the reputation of this class? And how does that link into the loss of the creature? And maybe you heard nothing about this class, in which case, good.
I think this entire piece is dedicated to the importance of not seeing everything through the lens of preconceived notions or stereotypes. And this course is supposed to be fairly difficult. It's an AP literature course, and so I think the more comical meaning of not being concerned with reputation is don't be scared off from this course. But I also think that we want to experience the literature that we read in this course, as well as things such as the Grand Canyon, without the preconceived notion of others, because that will ultimately affect our experience for better or for worse.
Right.
Yeah, that's literally exactly what I wrote on the gallery walk for how might we avoid throwing away our right of seeing and knowing. I agree completely with what Grace said. I said by leaving the standard preconception of society, and when we do that, we can create an experience that's more personal for us. So we may not have that internal conflict when something isn't the way we wanted it or expected it to be. But when we have our own personalities with things, and we have our own experience, and it's not through society's standards or society's eyes, or other people's experiences, then it's a completely different world.
Right.
With some people, how, I wouldn't say stubborn people, but when you're trying to get somebody to do something or realize something, you'll hear make them think it's their own idea because they'll cherish that more and they will understand it more. I think that's kind of the idea with the class. you know, if somebody learns this stuff on their own, they feel it's their own discovery, it brings a deeper understanding of it, and it creates more like excitement and stuff.
Okay, good. All right. Another, an additional concern would be that there, because I've taught this class for over 10 years, I'm kind of lumped into the reputation of the class, good or bad. And think about how, how you don't necessarily want to be judged by other people's feelings about you, perhaps, and at the same time, you don't. It's a challenge to live up to some expectations. There's different sorts of scenarios. This is certainly a unique experience in terms of the start of our year. And so, already we're facing a scenario where this year is not going to be like any other previous year of AP Literature. And so you kind of need to throw out those expectations that maybe you have because of reputation. Does anybody have a question that they need to have answered in order to be able to begin to write about the loss of the creature? Okay. So there are some things to kind of explore here. Let me see. What do I need to throw out? So number 3, we don't have enough time to do. Okay, so we're going to put a pin in that. I'll bring it back to our next agenda. And because we only have about 5 minutes left, I am going to ask you to add number 2 to your homework. And then there's some other homework stuff here. Do take a look, explore some of these links. So the homework is sort of a dialectic between us and between me and you and the material that I'm offering. And so there are some different ways at possibly getting at and into Walker Percy's The Loss of the Creature. And so hopefully some of this might help you get some new ideas and or different ideas. The discussion of innocence, I think, was important and valuable. And so on the one hand, while I'm sharing you this link to Songs of Innocence and Experience by William Blake, I'm certainly not asking you to read through all of his poems, but it might be worth noticing that some of these titles, so we've got Songs of Innocence and then Songs of Experience, and there are some poems in Songs of Innocence that are then revisited in Songs of Experience. So like A Little Boy Lost and A Little Girl Lost, we've got The Little Boy Lost on page 12 of this PDF. So you might, maybe take a look at the 2 of those. You might take a look at the introductions. I'm no expert on William Blake. I have studied William Blake in the past, but I thought I might just kind of introduce you to that. There's also a U2 album that I think was called Songs of Innocence and Experience. So, I try to explore some of those different things and anticipate some other questions that maybe just kind of didn't come up today that are frequently asked, but different ways at getting at Walker Percy's Loss of the Creature. So this number 2 is a bit of an on your own sort of thing. Number 3, we're bumping to next class. The homework is really, I think, what you want to focus on. Once you've gotten through the homework, then I'd maybe come back and take a look at the article that is titled How to Mark a Book and Why. I think that's the rest of it, as we wait for it to come up. If it even comes up. And maybe it won't. There it is. How to mark a book. Just simply how to mark a book. Do you have any questions for me? Any questions for the good of the cause that you need to address or have addressed? So my open office hours are booked today, but if it turns out that you get a quick question, I will have the open office hours open. In addition to the individuals who have an appointment, they've got their own specific session times. But if you pop in to the open office hours, stick around, ask a question through the chat, and I will, I'll hear that you're in the room, and I'll respond to your chat. Otherwise, today is the first day of our second full week. You can make it. We've made it through one full week already. And don't forget, next week we have a 3-day weekend. Or this coming week, and we have a 3-day weekend. So yay. Yay. We're almost to a break already. Yay. All right. Ask questions at any time. And I'll get to them as quick as I can. See you. Have a great Monday.
Hey, Mr. Coffee.
Oliver, yes.
Hello?
Yeah, Oliver.
Sorry, I was being a little bit participative in class today because I just been having connection issues like literally the whole entire time.
Yes, I could see that.
It's like been locking me off, and I could your camera would, or not your camera, your camera would just like stop and it would like speed up at like 5 times speed to catch it up to where it was before.
Okay.
Same thing with the mic, the audio, you would like stop talking and then it would speed up to like 5 times like speed before.
So I've recorded the bulk of the class, and I'm going to add that to the bottom to the end of the agenda. And
Right.
So if you need that, certainly check it out. Alternatively, if you have like a study hall or something on a black day, and you want to pop into one of those, Black 1, 2, and 4, those are my other AP Lit classes. And so you'd be welcome to join one of those.
My study hall is B3.
B3? Oh, bummer.
So
Okay.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
But I'll take a look at the link at the bottom.
Okay.
Or when you add it, or is it already there?
No, I need to still add that.
Right. Oh yeah, I'll